House of Wolves was written in the Paramore house at a dark time in the writing process. I think we were kind of all felt a little spent by just things that were going on, personal issues, and just, we really put a lot into writing a lot of those songs, up until that point. And I think we were kind of just at a point where it was like, all right, we need some time to breathe. And I remember kind of just wanting to play at that point for some reason, and I picked up Rob Cavallo's really big, red, clunky
I
acoustic
love that guitar. I love it.
And I tried to write a song really hard, but for me, when I say I'm going to sit down and write a song is when nothing comes out. So I sat there and kind of just stared at the wall for about an hour, and then I just start playing stuff that I thought my dad would like. And that kind of turned into the basis of House of Wolves.
Yeah. I remember him playing this thing, and I walked in, and it almost reminded me of a really early Smith song. The way he was strumming the verses were, it was kind of when the Smiths would try to do these rockabilly songs. There's one in particular. The name escapes me, but initially the chords were extremely catchy, and so, but naturally, like the vocal melody that went along with it was very Morrissey-like, and then we kind of just kept building on it from there. And we ended up with all these really great sections we'd always wanted to use in songs, like this almost like pseudo Detroit Rock City section, and then this middle section, which is just this ripping kind of, I don't even know how rhythm and blues, like with stops and like shouts, and it's just really crazy. So
It's like if Motorhead and the Stray Cats were
Yeah,
hanging
a
out in a
little bit.
club,
Yeah, that's a good
playing the jukebox, that song
They were
would
just
come
hanging
out.
knocking each other's teeth out.
Yeah.
That's what this song would be. It's my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
The Looney Tunes thing.
Yeah. It's totally, and it's weird too because I remember when Gerard was writing the lyrics and just the music kind of lent itself to this, like the song is kind of about sin and hell. And when I remember when hearing it, I pictured like fire and kind of brimstone. I also like the way the song starts. It's kind of like a tom drum thing, something that you could hear like in a jazz club. And I imagined maybe the patient like walking into this like club where there's just like fire and brimstone. And I remembered back to Looney Tunes cartoons. I can't remember the specific one, but there's this one where the character gets like knocked out and he descends into hell.
I
And
think he actually dies.
yeah, I can't
I
remember
know of the
exactly what it
cartoon.
is. Yeah.
There's a wolf character who dies.
Right, he dies and he goes into hell, and it's this jazz club where this jazz band is playing, and it's wolves are playing the music, and it's like there's fire everywhere, and there's horns here and horns there.
We should mention too, real quick, that the record is the tightest concept record we've ever done. It's based off the very simple theory of when you die. I'd always like to believe that death comes for you however you want subconsciously, and maybe it's like a manifestation of a strong memory. So for this character, the patient who's dying tragically young in his 30s in a hospital, his strongest memory is of his father taking him to see this parade in the big city when he was a little boy. So that's why death comes for him in the form of this black parade. So when it does finally get to him, he kind of goes on this odyssey of looking back at his life, looking at other people's lives. And this is the one moment on the record, House of Wolves, where I felt that he was maybe getting very afraid that he was going to hell. Like he wasn't sure where he was going, but he's pretty sure that he'd be going to hell. Or maybe he walks into a seedy bar in the afterlife, and he's reminded of the wages of sin. That's what I kind of pictured. This song.
And I said ashes to ashes, we all fall down. I wanna hear you sing the praise. I said ashes to ashes, we all fall down. We got in our sands for days. Well, I think I'm gonna burn in hell. Everybody burn a house right there and say what I wanna say. Tell me I'm not nature. Take this to my grave. Tell me I'm my bad man. Gag me like a stray.
Answer is arguably a collective favorite.
Yeah, that's my favorite song
Yeah.
by far. I think this is my favorite song that actually I've ever heard. Not even just the songs that we've done. I mean, it's by far the favorite that we've ever done, but I think it's probably my favorite song of all time.
I think it's the most emotionally impactful song we've ever written. I think we had gotten to a point as songwriters where it's so terrifyingly honest and in your face that it needs to be, but it garners an immediate response from people. People can't help but listen to the song. They can't help but shut up when it's playing, and that's part of the idea. that cancer affects, you know, 1 in every 3 people, and it's something that's affected all of us and something we take very seriously. And that's kind of why the title had to be so brutally honest. I think people may argue that the title's heavy-handed or that it's trying to get a reaction out of people, and the only reaction it's trying to get out of people is to face the honesty of it. And I feel that the song's actually very empowering. It was, I don't know if it was difficult to write so much as difficult to perform a little bit, but it was I mean, a lot of those takes are really just one of the first 3 takes. It was Rob on piano. I was doing vocals live with him, and it was one of the first 3 takes, and it was, you know, Rob always had this saying that your initial takes are the ones you want, because that's your first, most honest response. And we then laid the drums over, because I felt that in the second verse, when those drums come in, it gives you a sense of hope, which the song really needed. It needed a sense of urgency, of hope, empowerment that I think is in there. And, you know, so I think the song was very successful in that regard. It's the most pure form of song.
Yeah, it's hard for me to even really listen to it without getting emotional. It's just one of those songs that tugs on whatever that thing inside of you is, and you know, you're struck with the honesty and the beauty and the horrificness of what he's saying, and I think it's something that, you know, in a good way or a bad way, it strikes home with everyone that hears it.
Yeah, I think, like I said before, too, I think people could argue about the song all they want, but I think some of the greatest songs ever written have been the ones that people argue about, or the ones that people say, well, they didn't have to go that far, and I think we did have to go that far with this song, and I think that's why I'm so proud of everybody in the band for having the courage to put this kind of song on the record.
'Cause the hardest part of this is leaving you. Now turn away, 'cause I'm awful just to see. 'Cause
I'll start off with Mom, and then we can all tell our own stories about Mama.
Yeah, I think we all have stories about Mama.
We were in this arena in Chicago. I was very almost defeated. We'd been touring a long time. And I was backstage, and I just got this phrase in my head, you know, Mama, we all go to hell. Then I just heard this kind of bouncy, Doors-like, almost Alabama song riff in my head with it. And I was like, this would be cool. So I asked Ray to come backstage, and he'd played this kind of boom, bit, boom, bit. And it's exactly how I described it and what I wanted, and then it started to come together. So I think immediately we brought it to sound check, and we said, hey, guys, we got something new. Let's check it out. And then, you know, and then everybody it just immediately was like, all right, we're on to something new. So when we finally got a chance to look at Mama again, we were in New York, and we dug her up kind of, and we said, all right, let's work on Mama. And we knew it was going to be a procedure, you know. So we played Mama, and then we all just let the song tell us what it wanted to be. And we worked on it accordingly. And but we knew once we had almost completed that song that a new creative bar had been raised for ourselves, and that's when a lot of songs started to get cut. That's when we threw out a lot of songs that were just these simple punk songs, because they weren't going to make it anymore. And we knew Mama fit in very much with the story and this theatricality that we wanted to capture and the grandness. And it's a song that evolved. It was one of the longest songs next to Welcome to Black Parade to track, because so many layers, so many instruments, glockenspiels.
Exactly right.
Yeah, everything had to be perfect. Liza Minnelli, who was phenomenal, worked on the track with us and sang this one line that I really wanted, this voice that carried a lot of sorrow and strength, and carried with it a tradition. And the song needed it, because the song was kind of cabaret. The song was has this big chorale ending. It is almost Broadway, and it needed her, and it needed all the elements in the end. So I know everybody has a story about this song.
It's one of those songs where, you know, you hear like the first couple of bars of it. I remember when Ray and Gerard were kind of working on it, and it was like one of those things where sometimes they'll come up with something and it's like, all right, this is gonna be a hard one to write to and write with and find an ending, you know. But this one just kind of just kept going, and it was like, I have all these ideas, all these melodies that I want to, you know, I think should poke their heads at this point and that point, and maybe it should just go downhill here and then come back up with this different thing. And it was like it was one of those songs that just stayed in your head constantly, and you'd stay up at night thinking about. And when we finally got the chance to work on it in New York, it really took off running. I think, you know, it was one of those things where we were like, all right, should we pull back the reins on it? Should we let Mama be, you know, this entity and go off? What should we do? And I think we made the right decision and just let it grow into its own thing. As far as stories go, I think this is the most, you know, theatrical, visual song that tells a story that we've ever done. And man, it's one of my favorites on the record. I just think I'm just so happy that and proud that we didn't pull back reins on it. You know,
It's like one of those magical moments where you're like, oh, it's all these crazy sections, but it doesn't feel like we were trying to pull the rug out from people. So.
exactly. Yeah, that was one of the concerns too. It was like, all right, we get it. It doesn't confuse us, but anybody else that just listens to it that hasn't lived it yet, are they gonna get confused? And
Right.
that's the cool thing, that nobody has said that to me yet. I was
Right,
like, oh, this
yeah.
is really confusing.
I think, you know, people who people on first listen of that song really do get taken for the ride with it, you know, and there's never, you just really lose yourself, you know, like right off the bat, just from the way the first lines of the lyrics are delivered, like you get taken into the trenches, you know, and you're there with this guy who's scared as hell to be where he is right now, and you're there with him through the whole story. And in that regard, I think it is one of the most successful things that we've done because of that. Because, I mean, you're there, you picture what's going on as he's telling the story. It's pretty great.
We all go to hell. Mama, we all go to hell. I'm writing this letter and wishing you well. Mama, we all go to hell. Oh, well, now, Mama, we're all gonna die. Mama, we're all gonna die. Stop asking me questions. I'd hate to see you cry. Mama, we're all gonna die. When we go, don't blame us.
We should mention that Sleep was inspired by
Yeah,
a Toto song off the Dune soundtrack. That it's actually, to me, one of the most powerful pieces of music I ever heard. I think it's called Final Dream. It's about 1 minute and 10 seconds long. It's one of the most emotionally moving pieces of music ever.
I'll never forget the night that you guys were like, yo, we gotta write a song that has this feel to it. And I remember coming down one night, I was like, you guys are just up all night watching nerd movies.
Yeah.
That's exactly what came out of my mouth. And the next day it was like, bang, nerd movie come to life.
It just inspired a little bit of the music. But the song was actually inspired by these nightmares that I used to have at the Paramore, which were way worse than nightmares, actually, and way worse than night tremors. It was just like these things where it felt like my heart was stopping. It felt like I was being choked. I wasn't breathing. I wasn't sleeping. I was sleeping like a half hour a night.
What I think it's so amazing is, like, I've always wanted us to write, like, big guitar rock kind of, like, driving, something that reminds me of, like, the early mid-'90s. And that's exactly what this song reminds me of. And while they're playing it, you could just, you know, imagine, like, those bands, you know, the bands that you grew up,
Yeah,
your
Pumpkins,
heroes. Yeah,
for
like
sure.
Smashing Pumpkins.
It like Frank had mentioned earlier, it was during a very dark period when we were writing this record, and there were some emotional problems, and it was the culmination of every stress and fear I had, just wrapped into one song, and it's very much about, you know, fear and really just a desire for peace, and musically, I think it's the most epic thing we've ever captured. Rob devised 2 new guitar tones for this song. One is called Black Fire, the other is called Nemesis. Nemesis, which is the greatest guitar tone to me ever. It's so punishing and large.
As soon as he developed it too, I think Ray hit a chord and one of the walls just fell down.
I think so, seriously. There was some kind of makeshift wall we were using to close in some sound. I think Nemesis knocked it over.
Crumbled
So
under the foot of Nemesis.